Welcome to Professionally Psyched. I'm Jessica Muller, PhD candidate in Public Health at James Cook University. And before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge the custodians of the land on which we record. And for me today, that is the Bindal and Wulgurukaba peoples. And I pay my respects to elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and cultures from wherever you may be tuning in from across the country. Professionally Psyched is the podcast that brings you cutting-edge psychology research and real-world insights from our psych community of clinicians, researchers and educators alike. We're here to explore how psychology shapes our everyday lives and impacts the world around us. We are very excited to kick off this series with Alison Sheaves, PhD candidate in psychology, chatting with our very special guest, Dr. Amanda Krause, expert in all things music psychology. Join us as we hear about Dr. Krause's experiences, insights on unexplored research areas, and her incredible career journey so far. We hope you enjoy.
My name's Alison Sheaves. I'm a PhD candidate at James Cook University in the psychology department, and today I am interviewing Amanda Krause.
Thanks, Ellie. I'm a senior lecturer here at the Townsville campus, and my research area is music psychology. So I'm really interested in how we listen to music in our everyday lives, and then how those experiences impact our health and well-being. I'm also really interested in the scholarship of teaching and learning, because the teaching that I do at JCU in the psychology department is about research methods, and so we're really interested in how we help people learn and how we help other teachers teach these complex topics.
Fantastic. So that leads nicely into my next lot of questions, which would have been, what is your area of research, which you've nicely answered, but tell us a bit about a study that you're currently working on.
Yeah, I have a number of studies, but I think some of the work in progress that I have right now that I'm pretty excited about are two studies that both use experience sampling method. So the experience sampling method is basically asking participants to continue going about their daily lives, but they either get texted at a random point during the day, or when they do something, it triggers an event. So for this particular study, we are asking people to download an app to their phone, and that app runs in the background. So when they start playing music on their phone, it triggers some surveys to come up. So what's really cool about this is people go about their everyday lives. They don't have to do anything different, but when they listen to music, we ask them a few questions. What are you doing? Are you listening by yourself? Are you listening with other people? How do you feel? And we can collect that data across people's actual everyday lives.
That's really, really cool research, yeah, and lots of participants.
Look,
yes.
We need more people.
Always need more. Yeah.
So anybody listening, please participate in this study. So the ask is kind of big, even though you're not interrupting people's everyday lives. It's a little bit different than I fill out a one-time survey and I'm done, right? So we are asking people to do this over the course of a week, over the course of 2 weeks. And they have control over how often they fill out the surveys, but it is a bit more of a time commitment, but it results in really cool data that we need, right? So part of the thing about a lot of the research we do when it's a one-off survey is thinking about something that's already happened. Whereas what this method allows us to do is get that data while it's actually happening. But what's cool is then also we can look at this at the event level, but then we can also do multi-level modeling where we can look at and take into account certain events are attached to a certain person, so we can control for the people and really get a better understanding of what's actually happening.
Which is what we don't often get in psychology is, in the moment, everyone, as you said, will have to look back and think about the time. Yeah. So more, I guess you'd feel more like you're contributing more to the knowledge base as a participant in this type of research.
Yeah, I think so, and that talk about validity, right? So this is ecologically valid because we're not putting somebody in a room and telling them, okay, now listen to music and tell us what's happening, right? You're actually out and about, you're with your friends, you're at the party, you're listening to the music at the gym, or whatever you're doing is actually happening and unfolding in time. So that's what is also cool about these studies is it gets triggered while you're listening to music, but then 5 minutes later it asks you some follow-up questions. So we can see how your listening is changing and how your response there is unfolding over time.
Really cool, and not what we'd get unless we had modern technology now. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what's this method. I did a study using this method for my PhD, and I literally had to text individual people to trigger this, right?
Yeah.
So, and I was able to use like an online service, but I still had to send those messages. And even before that, people were using pagers and diaries and all sorts of things. Now, we can have people who are really smart and build these apps, and so you don't need an extra device, you're not doing anything different. It's a free app that you put on your phone, and you just continue about your day. So it's pretty cool to see how we can use the technology that already we have in our everyday lives for a research purpose without really interrupting people's lives.
Too much in their everyday life, right? Yeah. You mentioned that you did there's a little bit of this in your PhD or something similar to this in your PhD. What led you to pursue your area of research then?
So when I was studying in secondary school, I was really interested in both psychology and music. I was playing in the band, I was playing in the orchestra, in the jazz band, and I really loved both things. And then when I set off to university, I did my undergraduate in the United States. There you have to pick a major, but you don't necessarily have to pick a major from the moment you start. So I actually went in, and it's called undecided or undeclared. And I was taking psychology subjects, and I was really interested in them, but I still really had this passion for music. And I actually learned that you can combine the two. So that was what I was trying to combine the two. And basically I was able then to do postgraduate study in music psychology. So if you look at my undergraduate, I studied psychology. I also studied music therapy. And I was basically trying to do music psychology at a university that didn't have that as a major. And then I learned if I go elsewhere, I can do that. And then I didn't have to pick one passion or the other. What I learned for myself doing some of the music therapy coursework was I didn't necessarily want to be the music therapist. I didn't want to be the clinician because I didn't have the guitar skills and the piano skills to do it. But I wanted to create the research underpinning that. So I still wanted to help create the evidence used for clinicians. And that, I think, expands not only in the music therapy sense, but also clinical psychology too. So a lot of the work that I do has implications for how do we improve health and well-being.
So if students that might not necessarily want to become a clinician, but want to still work within that space, you can do the research that underpins what we see in the
exactly
practice.
And you still work with clinical psychologists. I work with people who are running community music organizations. I work with teachers. I work with other researchers. So you still have the ability to have these interdisciplinary different professionals in your team, and you can do these really cool projects even if you're not necessarily the person in the clinic doing the clinic work.
Yeah, and I guess that would give you a sense of that you're still helping people, right?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I'm trying to do more is work with different community organizations. They bring a lot of knowledge from outside of the academic space, and then there's just something really great about being able to see the impact we have in practice. I think that's the other reason I like doing not only my music research, but also the stuff in the teaching and learning space, because what we're learning gets directly put back into the classroom. So I think there's a really nice feedback loop that we really are taking what we learn from this research and trying to improve practice and embed that back into what we do.
Yeah. So would you say that's what keeps you passionate about this area of research?
Yeah, I think that, and the fact that choosing music psychology, I still have questions. So a lot of the people I remember when I was doing my PhD, and they'd be like, oh, are you sick of that yet? Like, oh, you must be tired of thinking about the same thing. I am still absolutely fascinated by areas of what I research, and I think when we learn something, you then have an immediate next question. And for me, I love pursuing those questions, and that's what keeps driving me to do more research.
So what are some of the questions that you love right now?
So we're trying to get this experience sampling in situ, real life data. And what's driving that is I'm really interested in trying to understand the associations between what people's goals are and then sort of like how music might be assisting that, and whether or not you have to like set out with the intention for it to have a positive impact. So some people go, okay, I feel bad, I want to feel better, I'm going to listen to this song to make me feel better. Do we need to do that? Or like maybe you were just like, hey, I'm bored and want to listen to this song. Is that still going to have the positive same amount or strength of impact? And we sort of don't know enough about that intentions piece. And because in everyday life now, music is everywhere all the time, I think we have to understand the power behind that. And I'm wondering if it has something to do with goals and intentions.
Yeah, so goals behind starting listening to music?
Yeah, to start, but then I think also maybe you started because you were bored, but now 5 minutes into your listening and you're having a little dance party and now your energy, your goal might change. And so I don't think we've done a good enough job of understanding that unfolding over time nature of it. I think we go, okay, you can tell me your goal at the start and you can tell me at the end what happened, but what about all the bit in the middle?
Because you can start out listening to one thing and then realize that you're changed, don't you? Like, how did I get from there to there?
Okay, and I started with that song. Yeah. Now on my playlist, I'm on this other song. Is my listening the same? Is it changed? Or is my attention elsewhere? And just trying to understand that it's happening in real time and changing.
So what is the role of Spotify AI?
Yes.
You've just got like a playlist that sort of feeds you stuff.
That's AI is a massive question mark for people in my field right now in just trying to understand the impact that it's going to have, not only on music generation, but on, recommendation systems that Spotify uses and other platforms. You can map that onto any type of media, right? Netflix, movies, TV, all of that, and really just trying to understand not only from like a creativity generation, the artist standpoint, but then the consumers as well, and who's got control and who's making choices. And how does that even now happen in this new landscape? And big question marks all around.
Fascinating. So what do you see then the next big issue or area of research in your area of psychology then?
I actually think part of it is this AI area for sure. And I think that, especially cuts across a lot of people's research, not just music research, but across a number of things.
It would tie into your learning as well.
Yeah, I mean, in education, it's a massive thing to think about all this generative AI stuff as well. So I think that's definitely a space. It's interesting because for music listening, the technologies continue to change. So right now Spotify is big, but that's not going to be the end, right? We don't quite know what's coming. So often I do think in terms of the technologies we use, but I don't want to tie that specifically just to the technology. I try to think about it from the larger theoretical perspective, right? Because if we just said, okay, there's a change from records to cassettes and cassettes to CDs, and if all we did was think about it at that purely technology level, our information would always be out of date. And so I think about the individual control that something like your phone in your pocket allows you to dictate the music, right? In 10 years' time, who knows what our phone is going to look like, or it might be a chip embedded in our head. I mean, it's just...
Who knows?
We don't know. But honestly, that's possible with like the way things are going. So I think with some of this research where it is tied to technology, we still want to think about the theory that underpins that, the psychological constructs that we learn about. So I think a lot about control and agency and map that onto the technologies so that my findings are still going to be relevant when we move from Spotify to the next thing, just like when we had moved from MP3s that we owned to a library online.
I guess we've seen an evolution in what we have audio-wise listened to with podcasts, with audiobooks, with music.
It is, and I think that's where some of my work has focused on the radio, but I've been focusing on more of the traditional idea of radio broadcasting, but then we need to expand that to understand where podcasts sit in. So there's always sort of a way to keep extending that work, but I think it comes back to making sure the underpinning of that is solid, that you do understand and approach it from a psychological construct or theory or model where you can base that in something and then just continue to add building blocks of knowledge.
Yeah, because I guess if you understand the motivation behind listening to music in a particular context, could be applied similar motivation for why you choose a podcast over music or something like that.
And it could be similar and it could be different, but that's exactly what I did. Is I was really interested in radio and not as much had been done, but I knew enough about the ways that people listen to music, and because music is such a big part of the radio, that I was saying, okay, well, now I'm able to have a hypothesis because I've done all of this work and I've done all of this reading, that I think I have a reasonable expectation enough to make a suggestion or a question, a hypothesis, and then I need to get that data. And I think for me, that was moving from music to radio, and then we can move to podcast.
Yeah.
Right? But it's not just that area. It could be anyone's interests.
Yeah. I feel like I see more people now with headphones in. You know, if you walk around the shops now, that headphones are so easy. They're small. They are lightweight. They connect to your phone. Everyone's with headphones on. I don't know, obviously, what they're listening to, but fascinating to see. I assume a lot would be listening to music.
We assume that, right? But there are people that would be listening to a podcast, an audiobook, and some people actually put it in and not necessarily listen to anything because it still is a physical signal of don't bother me.
Barrier from people.
Barrier.
Yeah.
But one of the things I really love is actually, if you go back to the original Walkman, it actually originally had 2 headphone jacks so that you could still actually have a shared listening experience. And I feel like we've gone so far into the individualized listening experience that I almost wonder if and this was partly, you could see it through COVID, is we craved the communal experience. And the original Walkman still tried to hold on to the fact that music is inherently social. Right. We do that together. And I just feel like if we've gone so far into individualized music, movie recommendations, are we going to start to crave more of that communal experience? And maybe are we going to start to pull those headphones out and sort of re-engage? I don't know, but that's a possibility.
Fascinating, because I guess you see on social media people sharing their Spotify playlists, so it is still this wanting to share with others this collective experience. And you see Swifties, and so many people are going to so many concerts now and just collectively sharing that experience, which are probably craving in that space. Yeah,
people were definitely craving in COVID, obviously physical separation, lockdown stopped live music, and we saw the impact of that. It was massive. And there's a difference between recorded music and live music. Our research shows that there's something about it unfolding in real time. Even if you don't go with other people, it's still a social, you're in this crowd. There's actually really cool research that says people's heartbeats start to synchronize in a crowd situation. It's happening in real time. There's some unexpected, what are they going to play? Singing along, my heroes right there. All of this stuff makes it a really unique experience that people see. And I don't think we're ever going to lose that. We're going to use technology to augment that, but there's something special about live music that I think is always going to be special.
I mean, you hear people go, do you remember that concert? Do you remember? Like, for decades, like, you still hear people, like grandparents saying that. I remember when I went and watched that collective shared experience. I think that's all the questions that I had.
Great.
Thank you so much, Amanda, for your time and all your insight. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to Professionally Psyched. This podcast wouldn't be possible without the ongoing support of our Psych community. If you'd like to show your support, or if you want us to cover anything on the pod, reach out via our emails, and don't forget you can listen to full episodes on Spotify.